What's up, guys? Cascade Wing here. We're back on Risk Universalis 3, continuing our tutorial series. So now we're going to cover military. So to start with military, you'll want to click on your text brick that you created with your country name. You'll want to click on Armies. You want to put your nation name. You can abbreviate it, try to make it shorter, make it look nicer. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to put in, I personally like to put in how many troops I have. Like I'll say like 5,500 troops. That's how much I have in an army. People like to do more detailed stuff. They'll say like 4,000 swordsmen, 500 cavalry, etc., etc. I like doing the more shorter approach, much more easier, and it's much more easier to manage while you're in battle. So I have personally created a nation over here called Aleppo. It's right over here. Their capital is Aleppo, and we are going to invade it. So what you'll want to do first is you'll want to mobilize your forces. So I am mobilizing 2 armies over here of 5,000 men, 10,000 in total to fight these guys. And if it's an AI, you have to spawn in armies. It's one of the rules of the game. You have to. So I'm going to put in Aleppo armies. Aleppo. And we're going to say about, it's a much smaller country than mine. We'll say about 3,500. And we'll make that a single army. So Aleppo. So we're going to declare war on Aleppo. But first we have to have a casus belli. I think it's how you pronounce it. But you have to have a reason to declare war. You have to have a purpose. So this nation is special because this nation is Christian. So we're going. That's our CB. So we have to RP it though. So for timid Egypt declares war on Aleppo, CB, Holy War. And now we are going to attack. The timid armies move in and engage the Aleppan forces. So now you think of strategies to work with. Aleppo is probably going to see our massive army, maybe make a quick engagement, and then they're going to retreat. And they will likely retreat behind the walls of Aleppo. That's what they're likely going to do. So what we're going to want to do is take Antioch, their second city. And now, the way I like to represent taken land, I like to take my main color, take a shade of that. You can use T color. Your primary color is the color you're using to color. The secondary is what you're calling over, and it will only color over the secondary color. Very interesting. So I want to go to cop, right click that to make it secondary. Click on this. I will click on artichoke, and then we'll do this. As you can tell, it's a much lower shade. It makes me know that this is occupied territory. The war is not yet finished, or I'm occupying the land, not yet annexing the land. And now we are going to move into the rest of Aleppo. And now we are going to begin the Siege of Aleppo. So we begin sieging the city. Sieges take a while to complete. Sieges are pretty long in the medieval time. They'll get much less large. They'll get much shorter as time goes on. As you have cannons, other technologies coming into play that really obsolete the siege, and sieges just aren't as often. You'll see some longer sieges, maybe like World War II. They do happen, but they're just not as. They're much more rare. Is the thing, much more rare. So after a couple of minutes, I'm going to say the Aleppan army has seen that they will not be able to win the war. So they are going to try to sally forth and try to take on my army as a one final ditch effort to try to defeat me. So this is now a land battle. So the Fatimid army outnumbers them. The Fatimid army outnumbers the Aleppans. What I'm going to want to do, since my army is based around high maneuverability, I will want to try to dance around the Aleppan forces. I will want to try to outmaneuver them, is what I'm going to do. Thus, we will be able to defeat them using numbers and maneuverability over these forces. And afterwards, they will likely surrender due to their defeat. And I'm not going to do a full annexation, because I feel like a full annexation would not be, it wouldn't make sense, because I don't want Aleppo, because it has Christians there. So instead, I'm going to take Antioch, which is Muslim at this point. Though it is Sunni, it is still Muslim. Now, I'm going to explain diplomacy. I'm going to go into full detail, so a basic overview, more detail than I did in the first video on diplomacy. So diplomacy, as far as interacting with other nations, you're going to have, positively, you're going to have 4 main things. You're going to have non-aggression pacts. You're going to have alliances, defensive pacts, and trade agreements. Trade agreements are pretty straightforward. You will offer them something, and they will give you something in return. Whether it's I give someone gold, and they give me wheat. Something of that nature. Or you could not go and deal at all, just say it's a trade agreement and that you bring merchants in between each other and they trade stuff. Stuff like that. Next, you have non-aggression pacts. These are agreements that you will not attack each other. And that's really about it. Next to alliances, there are agreements that you will defend each other, help each other, work together, etc. Next are defensive pacts. These are pacts that are agreements that if one nation is attacked by another nation, the 2 nations that are in the defensive pact will defend each other. And defensive wars only. Now, I will discuss treaties. This red country has just beaten the blue country, or teal, whatever you want to call it. So, instead of outright annexing the teal nation and completely taking over all its land, it makes much more sense to just take part of it. Something like that. Just take, like, this area. Leave this area to themselves, because it's just too expensive, and you'll cause a lot of rebels, and it just won't really work out very well. It just makes more sense that way. And to add on like war reparations, forced trade agreements, something of that nature, forced open borders, something like that, to try to add on to your treaty, because you'll want to get as much out of these treaties as possible, but don't go overkill on them. Next thing is don't teleport armies. This is what teleporting armies is. I have an army in Antioch, and I want to get them over to Barqua. So, what I do, if you're at peace, this is pretty much fine. But if you're at war, or moving to attack someone, or you're moving to defend against something, then you can't do that. You have to move them over, like, slowly, maybe about 1 stud every full second. So, like, 1 Mississippi, 2, 3, etc., etc. Something of that nature. It's more fair. It makes more sense. Next is don't metagame. Metagaming is where you're able to see something in the future that you shouldn't be able to. So, it's hard to explain, but I'm going to explain via an example. So, I am Russia, and I control Alaska. U.S. wants to buy Alaska. The Russians offered Alaska because they feared that it would be seized by the United Kingdom. So what this enabled is that Russia didn't want to allow the United Kingdom to gain control of Alaska, so they gave it to a much less powerful nation at the time, the United States, instead. Metagaming would be if you were If you refuse to do that because you knew in the future that there would be oil in Alaska, that is metagaming. If you had some other reason, like maybe US is threatening you or something of that nature, or you're allied with the UK, then you could argue that you don't want to sell Alaska. Next thing is whenever you get bored, I would suggest you spawn some sort of rebels because it's realistic. Like I would color this area white and then put on top of them rebels. It makes it realistic and it works. It also keeps you from getting bored by fighting some rebels every now and then. Yeah, I honestly think it helps things a lot. Lastly, it is okay to lose wars. Losing wars is realistic and part of a nation building process. If you lose a war, I would suggest you not get mad. It's simply a game. The worst thing I see in Risk Universalis 3 is people getting mad and too far into wars and taking everything personal that happens. Don't do that. It's just a game. And it's a nation building simulation game, and you just can't take losing seriously. It'll happen sometimes. Happens to me. Happens to everyone in this game. You'll lose eventually. You can't win every single time, especially not in ridiculously unrealistic scenarios. Thanks for watching, guys. Next, we're going to move on from Timid Egypt, and we're going to be looking at other eras and how different technologies work within Risk Universalis. Thank you, guys, and I'll see you next time.